Hello and welcome to the Midweek Check-in. It's really good to see you. HT After Hours presents Second Gaze. Last Sunday, Kingdom Ethics was the agenda. Matthew 18 and 20 covered three issues that we all have a hard time with. Jesus offers us a different way of seeing hierarchy, forgiveness and fairness. Here's the first. The disciples wanted to know who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. We live in a world where we are constantly assessing who we are in comparison to others. We live in a hierarchy-driven world and we need to know where we are in the pecking order. We ask who is the greatest because we want to know where we fit in. For these going deeper sessions to have any effect, we must listen and do follow-up work. Read around Matthew 18 verse 1 to see why the question, who is the greatest, comes up at all, and how Jesus' answer really shows that it's our thinking patterns that need to be transformed. That's hierarchy. Jesus treats forgiveness and fairness in a similar way. Matthew 18:21 and chapter 20 are where these questions are answered. For today's Going Deeper session, we need to go beyond these questions to discover why our thinking needs to be transformed. We touched briefly on the answer last Sunday when evolution and survival were cited as a lower form of spiritual existence. And Jesus' answer is to live life abundantly, to live life to the full. We want to climb the ladder, to be better than others, so we can be admired and highly thought of. Who is the greatest? Which I'm calling survival mode. And Jesus says abundance needs to be our goal. Living life to the full is what we're about. We know the answers. We know the scriptures. So why is the reality so elusive? Why is being able to recite chapter and verse not enough? John 10:10, we know, says, "The thief comes only to steal, kill and destroy. I came that they may have life and have it abundantly." We know the words, but we need to go deeper. The church is no use to the world unless we provide a credible alternative. And doing what we've always done is not going to be enough post-COVID. If we want the church to mean more to a watching world, if we think the church is irrelevant these days, if the church is not full of people living life abundantly, then we need to go deeper. Taking more responsibility for our personal spiritual growth is the way to go. So, in survival mode, the answer to the hierarchy, forgiveness and fairness questions will all be biased in my favour. Hierarchy. I want to be higher and better than you. Forgiveness. I'll forgive you, but I'll hold a grudge because it might come in handy at some point down the line. Fairness. If I work harder than you, I want to be paid more than you. Oh, and by the way, I decide who works hardest. We referred to this last Sunday as self-constructed ethics. Survival mode. I don't know that it's hardwired into our DNA, but just think about this for a sec. If close to 7 billion people are all operating with this mindset, all selfishly wanting our own way, what do you think will happen? War? Exploitation? Unequal distribution of wealth? Sadness and depression? We need more than to survive. God's plan for us is to do far better than just survive. Richard Rohr talks about a first and second gaze. The first gaze is survival mode. This is quoted from his daily meditations. The first gaze is seldom compassionate. It is too busy weighing and feeling itself. How will this affect me? Or how can I get back in control of this situation? This leads us to an implosion, a self-preoccupation that cannot enter into communion with the other or the moment. In other words, we first feel our feelings before we can relate to the situation and emotion of the other. Only after God has taught us how to live undefended can we immediately stand with and for the other and in the present moment. Undefended living is a description of empathy, being able to see through the eyes of another. This is a dangerous step on two counts. First, we lay down our own presuppositions and prejudice in order to make space for the views of another. This on its own is massive, but there's more. We also have to enter into another's pain. True God-inspired empathy is the platform on which transformation can take place. Richard Rohr's meditation continues. On my better days, when I am open, undefended and immediately present, as Gerald May says, I can sometimes begin with a contemplative mind and heart. Often I can get there later and even end there, but it is usually a second gaze. The true self seems to always be ridden and blinded by the defensive needs of the false self. It is an hour-by-hour battle, at least for me. I can see why all spiritual traditions insist on daily prayer. In fact, morning, midday, evening, and before we go to bed too. Otherwise, I can assume that I am back in the cruise control of small and personal self-interest. The false self is the persona we present to the world. It is not of itself good or bad, it just is. The power given to it to be sinful comes if we imagine that our false self is all there is of us. The false self, the personality that we present to the world, is what dies when our body dies. The true self is hidden under the false self, and the false self, as transformation takes hold, has to die. Colossians 3. Set your minds on things above, not on earthly things. For you died, and your life is now hidden with Christ in God. Set your minds on things above is the second gaze. We start with a self-centered approach, but realize that looking to Jesus helps us to live abundantly. Our true self is hidden in Christ, and the labour of a lifetime is to see our false self for what it is and work out how to let it go. Here's the Colossians verses from the Message. Don't shuffle along, eyes to the ground, absorbed with the things right in front of you. Look up and be alert to what is going on around Christ. That's where the action is. See things from his perspective. Your old life is dead. Your new life, which is your real life, even though invisible to spectators, is with Christ in God. He is your life. When Christ, your real life, remember, shows up again on this earth, you'll show up too. The real you, the glorious you. Meanwhile, be content with obscurity like Christ. If you can't identify with this false self stuff, say and mean, meanwhile, be content with obscurity. Meanwhile, be content with obscurity. 10 times. Your false self The one that needs you to be something, to be someone, will react. Read the verses from Matthew, that's 18:1, 18:20, and chapter 20, the first 16 verses, and Colossians 3:1-3, to see where you are on the principle of true self, false self. I'd love to hear your ideas. Thanks for listening. Click on the link below or go to the hadleytemple.org website and follow the Midweek Check-in link on the homepage. Have a great week and keep safe.